Like this type of thing happens all the time. It happens in
Okay.
business deals. Businesses
But
go bankrupt all the
hold on,
time.
hold on.
Certain,
But you're gonna absolutely tank the U.S. economy over it. But yeah, man, good to see you. Been a bit.
yeah,
Uh,
likewise.
yeah. So I guess we'll get into the topics here. I think you've got the list of topics for today.
I had just those two. So if we wanted to start with, I guess, DeSantis
Yeah.
announcing his presidency on Twitter Spaces, which I think is a great move because it's really so he's the first one to not really do like a live announcement. I think that speaks a lot more to like the Zoomer generation. Um,
Yeah.
and I
I think it actually shows that he's m- more or less got the backing of Elon Musk, which will go a long way in the primaries.
yes, but it's also that he's not trying to fit the molds because that's been kind of the big knock on DeSantis is that he is a politician, and that's what his biggest competition is obviously Trump. So Trump's whole campaign is I'm not a politician. I'm the everyday guy. Like I can do this even though he is one of the elite billionaires.
Right.
He's still been able to put out that kind of visage that he's going to represent the blue collar guys. And I think Ron DeSantis is proving that he can take that away.
Uh, I I don't disagree. I think the biggest nightmare for the Trump campaign has always been a Ron DeSantis run. And now that he's announced, I mean, Trump within like what the first 20 minutes was already launching attacks on him and his campaign.
Before
So,
that, but
right.
before he even announced, Trump has
Well,
been calling him DeSantis, which doesn't even really work that much. Like DeSwamptus would be a way better name.
the sanctimonious.
Yeah, yeah, and calling him Rob
Mhm.
instead of Ron, like that's just like childhood. Like you're 8 years old again playing the nickname game.
Right. But I mean, it was juvenile back in 2016. It's juvenile here. So we'll see.
Yeah, but I mean, just the nicknames that he had in 2016, like Lion Ted
Hmm.
and Crooked Hillary, like those were good. Like those cut deep. But all the DeSantis stuff just seems to kind of DeSantis brushes that off his shoulders.
I mean, the problem with DeSantis is he hasn't said anything that's stuck, right? Like that. And I'm not, I'm not completely convinced that DeSantis is like the right candidate, but I will say that I like him more than I like Trump, which I think a lot of leftists actually would agree with. Um,
Maybe. So
depends
so
on
the
how
impression
far left you want to go. Like,
the impression I get is that the media wants Trump. Like you see how like what bad things and like what
no,
targets the media is picking right now.
yeah,
They're afraid of DeSantis.
and CNN gave him a town hall, and I think that was completely out of fear of Ron DeSantis.
That
Like,
was an
bec-
amazing town hall though for Trump when
right?
he pulled the like all right let me pull the tweets out. I got them right here. I printed them out. Like
Mhm.
brilliant move.
No, nah, I don't know. I'm part of the group, I guess, that believes that like CNN should have just never had that town hall to begin with because it only stood to benefit Trump, and like it was only gonna work to the benefit of Donald Trump. And if that's not what you want, then you're doing a piss poor job.
But that is what they want. They want Trump because they so if Biden runs, they already had Biden beat Trump once. So who's the more beatable candidate out of anybody that's running on the right now? Even if you took that Ramaswamy, like I think anybody that could be in that general election, I think
Mhm.
Trump is who they want because it's the devil you know. You already know all the game plan to beat him. I think that's the move that they're trying to make, and they did the same thing in 2016 for hey, this is the guy that's more beatable. Hillary will mop the floor with this guy.
I mean, I definitely don't count Trump out of this, but at the same time, I think once Ron DeSantis's campaign actually gets going and like the stuff that he's going to put out and the fact that he's values and he's performance based, which is a big thing, uh, I think Ron DeSantis will be the front runner. I think Trump will be in a position he's never really been before, which is playing from behind.
Sure, and I think a big part of it's going to depend on how much Trump keys in on 2020. Like if his whole campaign is about how he had the election stolen from him and there was a bunch of fraud and he just keeps harping on 2020. I think that's a losing
Right.
campaign for Trump.
Right. I mean, yeah, I think we're mostly in agreement on this topic. I think Trump is he's going to have his hands full with Ron DeSantis, obviously. I forget who's the dude from South Carolina that announced he was going to run.
I can't remember. Is it the governor?
No,
Like, I
I
know
don't
it's
think
not Lindsey
so.
Graham. I know he's pretty committed to the Senate.
Right. I just remember reading he announced, but I was like, really? Like this dude?
I know Virginia, Glenn Youngkin was talking about running.
Let's look this up.
Yeah, power of the internet.
Yep.
But so Ben Shapiro asked a good question too about Trump. So if Trump does want to run in 2024 and it's going to be Trump versus Biden part two, what's he going to do differently to avoid the fraud? Like
Dude,
he hasn't answered that question.
right. Like if you truly believe that the election was stolen from you, right? You've done nothing to address the fraud. Like, so they're just going to steal it from you again, and it's going to be your fault. Like,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
you didn't call anything out, you haven't done anything. The answer to that question though was Tim Scott. Tim Scott is running
Tim
for
Scott.
president.
Yeah, that name does sound familiar.
Right.
Oh, he's a black dude, right?
Right. And that's why I'm like,
Yeah.
dude, as much
But
as
see,
I want a diverse field, at the same time, it's like we all know who this is really about. This is between Trump and DeSantis.
yeah, it's I only said black dude. It's just like that. Like, oh, that like now I know who you're talking about.
Right.
But no, I remember seeing some of his like his announcement speech, and there was just a little bit too much energy. It reminded me a lot of Don Jr.'s wife when she was
Um,
doing that, like just yelling to an empty crowd. Like at
right.
least Tim
Right.
Scott had a crowd, and like he had some people to kind of get excited about it. And bringing this back to DeSantis, that was kind of the thing that was lacking with him and pretty much all of his speeches is that there's just not that like pizzazz. Like it's
I mean, I get it, and I think that it is a showman's game, so it's going to be who's the best showman, and I don't think Tim Scott is anywhere close to the two big players. So, I mean, I could be wrong, I could be surprised, but I honestly think that it's going to come down to Trump DeSantis, and the real interesting question is going to be that if Trump loses the primary to DeSantis, does he go third party?
I mean that would definitely destroy the like
Oh, that would tank the Republican candidate, but
he's going to steal probably like 20% of the vote, 30% of the vote, no matter
oh,
what.
oh, easy.
So,
Or does DeSantis make Trump VP, and would Trump be okay with that?
I don't think Trump would want to be a VP.
Because I've already seen it floating around, like a Trump DeSantis or a DeSantis Trump ticket.
And that's what a Trump DeSantis would make more sense to me.
Right.
But I don't think, I think you're trying to put two alphas together, and I don't think it's going to work.
No, I don't think so either. But I mean, it is in the realm of possibility. That's what we talk about. So we'll, I don't know. It's going to be an interesting thing. I'm looking forward to it. Like, what do they say on like the dating sites? Like, election season is my Super Bowl.
I've never heard that.
Oh, well, call me out then.
Yeah.
One of us
Oh,
has spent more time on Bumble than the other.
yeah. Yeah. Oh, okay. Like you're talking about like the little questions that they ask, like what's your,
Right, right.
yeah. Okay. I know what you're talking about. But still, even if Trump, so bringing this into the next topic, like I feel like this will be a decent segue to look at the Durham report and
Right.
like I still don't see how Trump is going to be able to do any, like even if he does get president, like he is the president again, how is he going to stop this media machine that's just so motivated against him? Like DeSantis does have his like Casey DeSantis, I think is his wife's name.
Right.
She's like a media master. Like that's what she does for her real job is media. So
I mean, I'm not too sure that the media has it out for Donald Trump like everybody thinks they do. CNN gave him a town hall. Like, I mean,
okay,
you
but
could say that they're trying to make.
CNN during Donald Trump's presidency was running 24/7 news coverage on how is Trump almost as bad as Hitler? Trump is Hitler. Trump is worse than Hitler. Trump's followers are Nazi. Like they kept
First of
ramping up this.
Well, there's this thing in showbiz. There's no such thing as bad press. Like his name was constantly out there. Like if you go rewind the clock and rewatch the news from 2016, Donald Trump like absolutely decimated any other topic. Like I don't know, the American news media became Trump TV for almost that entire year. Like you couldn't turn on the news without hearing his name.
Okay, but you look at how Trump was getting that type of press, and the media is trying to hit Trump, but at the same time, the Hunter Biden laptop, if you tried to post about that on Twitter, your account got sinkholed. They're gonna attack Trump from every angle that they can, and then they're gonna run cover for whatever Democrat.
So this has always been my theory on the Hunter Biden laptop. It's been because it's the president's son and not Joe Biden's laptop. If it was Joe Biden's laptop, then yeah, it would be getting way more coverage. But this is Hunter Biden's laptop. We know he's got a drug problem. We know he's done a bunch of shady stuff, but has nothing to do with Joe Biden.
Okay, so that's where I disagree. So again, the drug stuff, I don't care about, like the hookers and stuff like that. Like, okay, if there's some underage, like, I'd be great.
You're focusing in on Burisma, right? And the Ukraine dealings?
Not just Ukraine, but China, like all of the deals that Hunter Biden was flying around on Air Force Two, doing deals on behalf of his dad. That's the stuff that I want to know about. That's the stuff that I want Joe Biden and Hunter Biden at least investigated. I'm not saying let's go prosecute them, let's go throw them in jail, but you can't tell me that there's nothing here.
The problem is that once you launch the investigation, if they come back and find nothing, you'll say the investigation's tainted.
Depends on who's doing the investigation.
You're really doing a double-edged sword. Do we want Durham to do it?
But I don't know necessarily Durham, but if it's going to be the FBI investigating it, like that's what the Durham report essentially proved, was that the FBI is.
Well, no, the Durham report says that in his opinion, no investigation into the Donald Trump Russia conspiracy should have happened, and that's something that I tend to agree with. However, he also hasn't cited any criminal wrongdoing. He hasn't cited, called out any names, this side or the other. He just said, well, the FBI shouldn't have looked into this, which is not the same as the FBI is corrupt.
I'm not saying the entire FBI, but there's definitely a sizable faction of the FBI that is working basically for the Clinton Foundation. Not just Democrats, but like there is a set faction of the FBI that's been compromised. If you're saying that this investigation should have never happened, then why did it happen? Why did they go raid Mar-a-Lago? And Donald Trump was actually working with the Hall of Records or whatever group wanted those classified documents.
If you read the Durham report, he doesn't say it should have never happened. He's saying that in his opinion, they didn't have enough to actually launch an investigation, which is a very different saying than it should have never happened.
That's tomato to me.
I'm just saying so he has a difference of opinion than the head of the FBI.
Okay, but the FBI
has said, have a differing opinion than the head of the FBI.
But the FBI has agreed, saying, "Oh no, we changed all of our policies since we've changed the rules to make sure that this doesn't happen in the future." And then if you want to keep going down this hole, you got Adam Schiff, who was on live TV saying he had hard evidence that Donald Trump was colluding with Russia, hard evidence to back up all these reports. And he couldn't share them because it was classified, but kind of like Sidney Powell, like the Kraken's coming. And Adam Schiff, almost no repercussions until GOP took over the House.
Oh, I don't disagree. I think Adam Schiff is a liar just like everybody else. So,
but where's the accountability?
I mean, the only people that can punish you, according to the GOP, is your voters, because we have a known liar, someone who lied about his credentials, who is still sitting in the House.
Okay, but I don't see any GOP people defending him. I don't see anybody.
But they're not. But they're not going to They're not going to redo the election for sure. Because if they lose him and a Democrat sweeps in, all of a sudden they lose control of the House.
I don't think they would lose control. I think they've got
it becomes a 50-50 split.
Definitely not. I think they have an 8-person majority right now.
So you're telling me you can't throw one dude under the bus to at least appear like you've got some integrity?
Out of how many House of Representatives are there? 200 something?
Mm-hmm.
So when the margin's that close, like, yeah, I understand that they don't want to lose somebody else, but if you want to talk about, what is it, George Santos? I think that's his name.
Yeah,
That's
George
the
Santos. That's who I'm referring to. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I knew the story. I just wasn't sure if I had
Right.
the name right. But yeah, I mean, I think most non-politicians that are conservative would agree that that dude's just as bad. Like, he should be gone.
Right. Yeah. But I'm gonna say till this date, he still has his seat. So
That's fair.
there doesn't seem to be any political will to punish bad actors. And I agree, Adam Schiff is a bad actor. Like going up there and being like, I have irrefutable evidence, this, that, and the other. And we're like, well, if you had it, you would share it. You would definitely share it with the FBI and get charges filed. But you didn't. So you had nothing.
He had nothing, and he also knowingly was lying and contributing to basically railroading the first 2 years of Trump's presidency.
Yeah, but that's pretty par for the course when, your party is the party that is not in power. They always try to railroad. I mean, look at when Republicans seized the Obama house.
I don't like, you're talking about when Obamacare got passed.
No, I'm just saying 2 years after Obama gets elected, Republicans seize the House, right? Then what do they proceed to do for the next 2 years? They railroad him. That's just the way it works. That's the way politics has worked since the 2000s.
Are you going to say the debt ceiling is Republicans railroading Biden administration?
No, I think it is the dumbest thing in the world. You are fighting over whether or not to pay a budget that you guys already signed earlier in the year.
No,
I think
it's
the
not the
debt
same
ceiling is
people.
absolutely retarded.
So you think Biden is right to say that he shouldn't be negotiating? Like, I don't want to negotiate with these people, and then when there's basically no time left, like, okay, well, I guess I got to negotiate.
No,
That's the Republicans' fault.
I think Biden holds, for lack of a better term, the ultimate trump card, which is the 14th Amendment, which is saying like the 14th Amendment says that the country's debts must be paid.
Okay,
And if you are going to stonewall and hold the power of the purse over my head, I think you're conflicting with one of my objectives here that the Constitution says must be done is the country's debts must be paid. So I think
okay,
you have a strong legal footing to just be like, I'm going to step around Congress on this.
okay. So first of all, the Republicans did pass a debt ceiling bill that would have allowed the debts to be paid. It's not like the bills aren't like, if that bill doesn't get passed, it's not like the bills aren't going to get paid. It's not like Medicare and Social Security are going to get cut. It's going to be all the spending, like Green New Deal spending. It's going to be the Democrat playbook that's going to get cut.
Oh, this is money that has already been spent. That's where I think the rub is this is the country's debts. This is money we've already spent, and now it's like, well, yeah, I got into this car payment for $800 a month, and now I really don't want to pay that.
Okay, but what's going to happen is the car payment's going to continue to get paid, and you're going to stop paying for your Starbucks and
No,
getting DoorDash every day. Like, that's the stuff. That's the type of stuff that's going to get cut. It's not going to be your water bill. It's not going to be your rent. It's
but
not going to be the
you're
credit
looking at
cards.
it. You're looking at it the wrong direction. This is if I've already bought a year of Starbucks and I've racked up a ton of debt in order to do that. And now I'm looking at it going, well, I don't really want to pay this. That's what you're doing here because the money's already been spent. We're already saying, hey, we owe Raytheon this. We owe Boeing this. Like, are you really going to turn around and be like, well, we might not pay out on some of these contracts because we can't come to a decision on whether or not we should cut Medicaid?
Yes, we're going to tell people that
Okay.
these bills were passed and they were a mistake, and life's tough. Like this type of thing happens all the time. It happens in
Okay.
business deals. Businesses
But
go bankrupt all the time.
hold on.
Certain
But you're going to absolutely tank the U.S. economy over it.
that they're not.
They
So
are.
if you look at the bill that McCarthy put, he just said, let's go back to, I think it was like 2020 or 2022 levels of spending. Like,
Yeah.
stop ramping this up. Stop printing money like
And the thing
there's
is,
an
like,
infinite
I
supply.
agree we should spend less money, but you can't say I'm going to start spending less money and not pay off the things that I've already spent on. if I've already gotten the car and I go, you know what? I don't like $800 a month car payment. I'm only going to give you 600. What does the bank do?
Okay, the bank repossesses the car.
Exactly.
Yeah. So
Which downgrades what? Your credit, the U.S. credit, the U.S. faith and trust as the global currency.
if we had been doing that on a global scale, like if we were telling China, hey, we were going to pay you
I mean,
$100 billion and now we're only going to pay you 80, then yeah, that looks bad.
the
But if
Chinese
it's
bank has already downgraded our credit rating.
okay, but what I'm talking about is domestic spending.
Okay.
Like if we're saying like, okay, we were going to spend all this money on solar infrastructure over 10 years, and hey, we're cutting that contract. You're only going to get the 2 years of payment for the work that you've done. That type of thing happens all the time with with other companies.
The problem is we've already cut the check, and now what you're saying is I'm going to bounce the check.
Pretty much,
Okay.
pretty much. And
And I would say you would have to really own the repercussions of that. When
yes, and
when the U.S. stock market just plunges, that's got to be Republicans owning it.
when we talk about who's owning that, it's not Republicans, it's
It
Joe
is.
Biden and his administration.
How?
Because he's the one that's overspending. He's the one that's spending more money than we have and just saying, okay, we can print more
But
money.
the thing is
And
I
who
can
ends
go
up
back
paying for
and
that?
be like every president since the year 2000 has spent more money than they've had.
Okay. Does that
But
make it
there's only
okay?
one party that has stepped up and said, "You know what? We're not going to pay our bills anymore." And that's the Republican Party.
And phrasing it like that is disingenuous. It's not, hey,
No.
we're not going to pay our bills anymore. It's, hey, we're spending way too much money. And yeah, there's a Republican president that's doing it, but you're ignoring the other however many hundred Republicans that are in Congress saying, like, hold up, like, let's pump the brakes here on the spending.
The thing is they always say let's pump the brakes on the spending when there's a Democrat in power, but I don't remember anybody saying let's pump the brakes on the spending under Donald Trump or George W. Bush for that matter.
What happened to that wall? Trump said, let's build a wall. And I think Trump
Mhm.
had all like, I know he definitely had the House in his first 2 years.
Okay.
So what
If
happened to, I think it was
it was really a priority for the Republican Party, when they've gotten it done in the first 2 years. I mean, that's how we ended up with Obamacare. Was Obama seized the moment and passed Obamacare within the first 2 years?
But see, that's the thing. It wasn't a priority for the Republican Party
Well,
because Republicans in Montana and whatever states above that Mason-Dixon line, they're not going to care about
I also think that
immigration.
the number of people that own property on the border, which my family does, they're not going to let that property be seized by eminent domain, and they're not going to sell it. So the wall in itself is just a bad idea, like all the way around.
So you're telling me you would rather have illegals using your property as a border crossing and
No,
camping and leaving whatever type
I,
of
I'm not saying that at all. But what I am saying is that you're trying to say like, oh, we're just going to seize land and build a wall. And I was like, eminent domain is a terrible thing wherever it's been used.
okay, so you're saying your family owns the border?
We own a piece of it, yeah.
That doesn't sound right to me. Like, so your family should be the ones like if there's an invasion coming across that border, your family should be the ones defending your section of the border and
If
whoever owns
we
this section.
if we own the land, yes.
I would agree that you should be helping with that, that like you should be defending your borders, but
Right.
I also think that's a federal issue that our borders with another country. That's why.
The thing is you're arguing it from a federal perspective, and I'm arguing it from a state's perspective. If Texas wanted to come down and police the border, they should be able to, which they've done on several occasions. And I kind of have a problem with the way they did it, but a state's right to patrol their own borders, sure. The problem is that they want to make it a federal issue because if Texas seizes control of their border and blocks all immigrants and stuff, and Arizona doesn't, you still end up with a flood. It's just going through Arizona this time.
But that's why like Texas wanted to send illegals back to Mexico, but the state of Texas isn't able to negotiate with the country of Mexico. So it has to be the country of the United States, the federal government, that's going to be negotiating and sending these people back to wherever. And I don't I nobody's still nobody's been able to explain to me what's so wrong with Mexico. Like why can't people that leave from wherever in South America.
So
What's wrong with Mexico?
the problem is that under the UN asylum policy, which is a thing that we've actually signed, it states that anybody seeking asylum should be able to enter our country, claim asylum, and then be processed that way. So if someone comes into our country, says I'm seeking asylum, and we send them back to Mexico, we are violating a UN treaty that we signed. Like, that's just the bare bones of it. Is we signed a document saying we wouldn't do this, and now we are. Now, you can make the argument times have changed. Like, I've made this argument. I think times have changed, and that we should have processing facilities in Mexico. I think you should have to go to a U.S. embassy on the border. But there is no plan to build those facilities. There is no plan to process them that way. All we're saying is, oh, well, you have to wait in Mexico, walk across, set a court date, go back to Mexico, spend however long it takes to process, living in Mexico, while we decide whether or not you could get asylum here in the United States.
And why is that such a bad thing?
Well, mainly it's because we said we wouldn't do that, and now we are. And the second is that's not the way asylum works. In order to claim asylum in a country, I first have to set foot in your country.
Okay, but so is Mexico not an asylum country?
I mean, I believe it is. I believe they've signed the same treaty.
Okay, so why do we have people from South America caravanning across all of Mexico?
Are you gonna are you gonna make the argument that Mexico is safer than the United States?
Some parts of it.
Okay.
Some part, like if you want to look at like south side of Chicago, like the gun free zones that have more gun violence than anywhere else, I think in the world, like that starts to look not so bad compared to the cartels. That
I think
really the violence in the cartels is just against their enemies. It's not a lot of random bystanders.
I think a lot of random bystanders would argue with you, but at the same time, I'm just gonna say, like, look, the problem with the U.S. immigration policy has always been a marketing problem. It's we go everywhere saying, hey, the United States is the land of opportunity. Anybody can make it here. Anybody can do this. And then you're surprised when people show up.
I'm not surprised when people show up. I'm surprised when we let anybody and everybody that wants to come in, come on in. Like you're telling me that's not going to tax homeless shelters. That's not going to tax the healthcare system, the education system.
Our system doesn't function without cheap labor. It just doesn't. And Americans, we don't work for cheap. So where are we getting our cheap labor from? It's mostly illegal immigrants or the immigrant population in general. So when I say I want an open border policy, what I'm actually advocating for is, hey, I want a policy where if you come to the United States and you work your butt off for 10 years and don't claim any sort of, benefits, you pay into Social Security, but you're not going to get Social Security benefits for those 10 years that you worked and paid into it. And at the end of those 10 years, you've learned English, because I think 10 years is long enough to actually get a good grasp of the language. And you can take a citizenship test and you pass. You're a citizen in my book. You've paid into a system, received no benefits. You've learned the language. You've learned a skill. You can actually benefit our society. Why wouldn't I want you here?
So finally, I think we found something that we agree on.
Right.
That service guarantee citizenship mentality, that as long as you're paying taxes on that, because I wouldn't want you just being paid under the table.
Right.
I think
if you can show 10 years worth of taxes that you've paid and gotten zero return on, you're in. That's all I want. Like
I wouldn't even say zero return. Like if you've got some type of health issue and you got to go to a hospital and they got to patch you up and whatever it is. Like,
oh, no, what I'm saying is like you never, or you filed a tax return and then the IRS has sent you back saying you're not going to get one because you're within that 10-year period. That's all I'm saying, is as long as I can see that like no money has been paid out from the IRS back to you. So you've paid into a system without receiving anything in return. I don't see why not.
I would still be okay. Like if you're overpaying your tax, like that's what most tax returns are, is you pay too much in taxes. So I would think that's still fair that you get that return back on whatever you overpaid. But we're in agreement that if you show up, you develop a skill. And I've been kind of chewing on this idea for a while that I think once you're 18, like I would be very much in favor of everybody goes to boot camp, learns how to use guns, learns gun safety, learns self-care, self-discipline.
I mean, I served in the military, so I served with a bunch of people that were not U.S. citizens, and this was their way to gain citizenship, was service. And the
That
thing
sounds
is,
totally fair.
is like you'll be in a platoon with some dude from Nigeria who's just working on his citizenship and can't shoot to or can't shoot a broadside of a barn, but really good guy, was here for all the right reasons and became a US citizen. And from that point on, I've always said, like, hey, if you want to become a citizen, there should be this time period in which you learn the language for sure, because I can't go to Poland and become a Polish citizen without taking a literacy test, which I have to know Polish. I have to be able to speak to Polish people. So I think Republicans are right in that aspect of it, is you should have to learn English. Now, no one's saying you can't speak your native tongue, but you should at least know English. I think that's fair. I also think it's fair that you should pay taxes just like everybody else, and you should be able to prove at the end of a 10-year period that you've paid all of your taxes in that time. You've skated none of them.
It sounds like you're trying to return to basically like a 1920s mentality where,
Right.
you know,
And I
Ellis
don't see,
Island and
and I don't see what was wrong with that. Now, I think there should be, the thing is you could get rid of all the bloat and the administrative layers that right now is our immigration policy if you just made it, hey, you come across the border, someone gives you a job, you work that job, you pay your taxes for 10 years, then you show up at an immigration office with all your documentation and say, hey, I've worked the last 10 years, I've paid into the system, I know English, I would like to become a citizen. And it should be that quick. It really should be.
sounds like you want to make America great again.
Always. I mean, we've always wanted to make America great. We've just disagreed on what makes America great. Because
Yeah,
I would
yes and
definitely
no.
like not to go to the 1950s.
Yes and no. I mean, yeah, even 1920, like every period has it had its downsides, but if you want to look at the 1950s, like I feel like you're talking about the racism, like racism and sexism as being like the hallmarks of
Not only
the
that, but
bad
like,
sides of 1950s.
I mean, you could say sexism a little bit. I think women and their ability to open their own bank accounts and manage their own lives and be in charge of their own lives is definitely a good thing that we have now. But if you rewind the clock, they didn't have. Um, which is crazy to me that they didn't have it for as long as as long as we've been a country up until what, the 60s, which is insanity to me.
It, it is and it isn't. So in 1776, like you fought a war, and I think it wasn't until like 1786, 1785, somewhere around there, that we actually really became our own independent country. Because up until that point, we were fighting for that right to be our own country.
Mm-hmm.
And I think within 10 years, within maybe even 5 years, you already had states that were voting to ban slavery. You were basically still expanding west. You're still conquering the land, and it's you got to process things in order. There's bigger fish to fry when you have still Indians and Mexicans and everybody that were fighting. You know, hey, where are these borders going to actually lie? I don't know. The civil rights sounds kind of back burner to me.
I mean, I don't disagree there, but at the same time, it's like, well, now looking back, we can be like, hey, it was kind of a travesty that, black people didn't have the right to vote until they did. And then, you know, the three-fifths compromise was a terrible idea, and we probably shouldn't have done that. Like, it's, at the time, it made sense. At the time, it did. And the thing is I don't knock the people of that time for going that way, because, I mean, just because I can look back and see it was a bad idea now, at the time, it was a way for the people in power to keep control.
That, and it was still like steps towards the ultimate goal. I think
Right.
when abolitionists were passing the three fifths, or accepting it rather, it was more of a like it's better than zero, right?
What, I think it's
Like
the Dave Chappelle joke where it's like, man, I just want them to do it accurately, where they're writing the Constitution. It's like, we believe that all men are created equal, and they look up at each other and they go, you know what we mean. Like that's really what it is.
it again, it is and it isn't. But that like there were some states like you look back and you're trying to say all of these people shared the same mentality and like it was all this one cohesive movement.
Mhm.
And you had states, I can't remember which state, but there was one that before 1800 had already been banning slavery. Like we
Yeah, there
had
were.
barely been a country, and there was already, I want to say Maine, somewhere way up in the north.
Well, abolition had been around for a long time or then it became popular, and then abolitionist movements sprung up everywhere. But everything has to start somewhere. But you're right, it is steps towards the goal. But that doesn't mean to look back and be like, oh, well, we were kind of barbaric back then. We're better now.
I would say we are back. Like, do you think America is a more or less racist place than it was even in 1950?
Um, I would say we're moving in the right direction. Like, definitely. I think we're headed in the right direction.
We are, and we have been headed in the right direction for a while. And just like a stock market, stocks always go up, right? But there's some down periods. But overall, if you look at a company that's been around for 100 years, that stock price is much higher today than it was 100 years ago.
I mean, you're going to make me argue against the stock market, but you are correct. Every 10-year period, the stock market has been up. It's just the way
So
it's been working.
yes, but and I don't mean to like equate this to stocks, but it's the same idea that there's expansion and contraction, and I think the expanding periods far outweigh the contracting periods.
I mean, I don't disagree, but I always think that it's, 3 steps forward, 2 steps back is pretty much the way we go. Like, but at least we're moving.
But it's progress.
Yeah. And the thing is it's hard to define progress because you don't really know it until after the fact. Like,
Yeah, I don't know if we want to open the door here to the trans stuff to see to look at that as we're taking
dude,
steps forward or steps backwards.
the thing is like the trans argument is hard. It's because I want people to have the freedom to express themselves. I do. Like, I think if you want to present yourself as a woman, even though you're a biological man, that's fine. It gets a little murky when kids get involved. It gets a little more murky when public education starts getting involved, right? Like it's like, well, I want people to have the ability to express themselves, and I want them to know that like being trans is an option. Do I want that option enforced by the state? No. I don't want it enforced by the state. I don't want it enforced by a federal government. I think people should just be who they are. And I mean, we have furries running around and no one's talking about taking away their rights. Although I would argue some of them definitely should have their rights taken away. But
There's still no right to like having sex with an animal is illegal, I think, in all 50
yeah,
states.
but that's a whole other thing. Like the furry community is like a community that it's fun to punch down on, but at the same time, it's just people expressing themselves. And
Yeah, and
there are
it's
some
so
bad actors in there. Not going to get into that.
so two points here. Number one, like another Dave Chappelle quote, that I want everybody to be able to express themselves and live their best lives and be who they want to be. But my question is, to what extent do I have to participate in that expression?
And I mean, and I think that's the thing. Like, it's the trans person comes up to you and tells you that they would like to be, referred to as she, her, right? It takes nothing out of my day. It literally costs me nothing to switch my vernacular to use those pronouns. But your argument is like, well, I just don't want to participate in their delusion. It's like, well, we're gonna have to.
It depends on what that person looks like. Like if that person looks like I do, like has facial hair, has I don't know, like I would hope I have obviously masculine features.
Mhm.
Uh, and you're saying you want to go by she, her, or z, zer, zay, zent, like you want to
Yeah.
start using the made up pronouns. That's where I'm going to start to draw the line.
Okay.
But even if somebody does, like somebody looks like Jazz Jennings or I can't think of some of the other more obvious like some like there's I can't think of her name or his name, I guess. But it's a biological female, and like there would be a big issue if he was using the women's restroom. Like you walk in, like, what's this dude doing in here? Even though it's a biological female, like those lines I think are acceptable. But the big problem that I have with all of that is there are absolutely predators. There are absolutely people who will use this loophole in the system and say, "Oh, all I have to do is claim that I'm this other gender or other sex, and I'm allowed to go be in this spot that's supposed to be safe for women." And
Oh, and
how do you weed that out?
I don't disagree that's definitely, if it hasn't already happened, it is going to happen, right? You're going to
It's
have
been happening.
predators that take advantage of the system. And the thing is I don't have a good answer for that. I really don't. Um, but what I do know is that you have predators that take advantage of every system. Like if there's a system out there, you have somebody out there that's taking advantage of it in a negative way, and we don't say, well, we should end Social Security just because people scam Social Security checks all the time. But what you're saying is like, well, because there's going to be these bad actors, we should just not allow trans people to use the restroom of their choice.
So I think it's a more nuanced conversation than that. I think the percentage of people that are scamming Social Security and get away with it, and there's never any like reclamation. I don't know if that's a real word, but there's no reclaiming that money. I think that makes up a very small percentage of the money that gets issued from Social Security that gets issued from these.
But my answer's the same for, like, my answer's the same for both. It is you deal with the bad actors the same way, which is you send them to prison. I mean, that's just the way that works, right? You get caught scamming Social Security, you're going to jail. You get caught in, molesting people in the wrong bathroom, yeah, you're going to jail.
Do you though? Because if you claim that you're trans, like if your molestation, like the way, let's say the way that you're doing this is you're just exposing yourself.
Right.
Like you're a dude and you're just swinging dong in the locker room, and then somebody comes in and tells you like, hey, this isn't okay, and like, what are you talking? Like, what are you, bigot? Like you can flip the script on them, and then there's no penalty. All you have to do is claim.
But the thing is like, viewing the human body, I don't think is assault. Assaulting someone, I think, is assault. So,
I'm not saying assault, but
right.
I would say that is harassment at the very least.
Well, it would depend. Like if they're out there just absolutely like, hey, look at this, then yeah, that's harassment, right? But I mean, I don't know if you've ever been to a YMCA, but there's a bunch of old dudes in the locker room that just let it all hang out. Like I didn't really want to see that, but it's not like I can, sue
I don't
somebody for that.
I don't spend as much time in YMCA locker rooms as you do apparently. But
Well,
what
I mean,
I'm
I
what I'm
grew up going to the YMCA. That's all I'm trying to say.
what I'm getting at is basically Leah Thomas. Like there's a bunch of people that were on that team and having to change in that locker room that are citing Leah Thomas like
That's why they feel
swinging dong.
uncomfortable. And it's like, well, maybe we should address the actual problem is why do you feel uncomfortable staring at a fellow human's body?
So I think the question that I would ask is why do you think that women don't deserve, that females don't deserve a safe space?
Because the safe spaces have always been a lie. Like even back when people were advocating, oh, this is a safe space for this, it's always been a lie. There is no safe space.
Safer space.
It's not even a safer space. Like I, as a dude, if I am going out there to assault women, what stops me from going into that bathroom? What stops
Uh,
me from just barging in? You,
Security and the people that
you
work there.
you think a sign is going to stop me?
And I'm not talking about a sign. I'm talking about when a biological male walks into a female's locker room
Right. You
and
want it.
nobody's going to do anything
You
because
want it
that,
seen as weird. That way, it stands out, right?
but nobody's doing anything because that guy says he's a girl.
Okay. Well, have you ever been in a position where there's like a line for the bathroom and the female bathroom? This is way reverse, but normally it's women waiting in line for a bathroom, but they'll use the male bathroom because there's the line and the male bathroom's open, right?
Yes,
You
but
don't see that
I
as
don't.
weird.
I I wouldn't have a problem. So I think in every single circumstance that you're describing,
Mhm.
that female goes into a stall, does what she does, and then
And
she's
then
out.
leaves, right?
But if there's a female that's at the urinal and like I'd be like this, that would make me uncomfortable.
Okay. So to flip the script on you here is like, why does that make you uncomfortable? Like at what point is participation in your comfort level my responsibility?
I would say when it exceeds the 51% mark for voters.
I don't.
Like if we as a society agree, and I would say the same thing. There's plenty of rapists out there that like, what's the problem?
Yeah.
Like why should your discomfort be my problem? And I think 99% of the population would agree, like, no, you shouldn't be doing that.
No, I agree when it comes to rapists for sure, but like the trans person just trying to live their life, I don't think needs to participate in your comfort level.
Okay,
If you're uncomfortable, leave.
they need to
That's simple.
participate in my comfort level as much as I need to participate in theirs.
Okay.
And again, I'm not worried about the trans person that's just trying to live their life. I'm worried about the predator that's claiming to be trans so that they can go be a predator.
Right. And what I'm telling you is we deal with those people the same way that we've always dealt with all crime, which is trial, prison. That's the way this works.
Kind of. Crime in 2023 is more based on the the hierarchy of your victimhood.
Well,
Like
I
you look
don't
at
I don't disagree with that at face value, but what I will say is I don't think it's actually a degree of victimhood. I think it's the degree of money in your pocket.
you tell that to the and I don't want this to sound racist, but I mean you got to explain somehow how black people make up 13-14% of the population, but commit over 50% of the murders.
I
And
do
most of the
because
victims
black
of that
people.
murder are black people.
The
But
thing is that I can explain this very easily. It's because black people are over policed in their communities because we think that's where the crime is.
what do you mean think that's where the crime? Like if they're the police were in Paul Pelosi's
Hold on, hold on.
house pretty quick.
How many of the prison population, how many are in there for minor drug offenses? And then separate that out by race. If you
So
are if you are if you are black, your minor drug offense is going to land you in prison. If you are white, your minor drug offense is going to hit you with a slap on the wrist most of the time.
in 2023, I mean, I think that's going to vary by state, but you look at the amount of people that are released on the streets, especially in like New York, where the that Alvin Bragg is saying like he's not going to prosecute a bunch of these low level crimes, and then finally that Daniel Penny steps in and chokes the guy out, and unfortunately he lost his life, but at the same time that guy was a threat to pretty much everybody around him.
But he wasn't. That's the thing. Who was he threatening?
A lot of people. He was yelling, "I don't care if I go to jail."
Okay.
He had tried to push somebody onto the subway tracks. He had assaulted some older
Well,
guy, maybe older woman, but
we're
older
gonna let this
person.
play out in court. But from the videos that I have seen, that dude was just crazy. And if we're saying that it's okay to kill crazy people, then I have a big problem with our legal system.
It's definitely not okay to kill crazy people. I don't think what we witnessed was a murder. I think what we witnessed was a restraint going too far.
I think he held him way too long. And the thing is he's a former Marine and he should know. Like McMap training is something we all go through. And he held him for way too long. Like that dude went limp and he still had it locked in.
For sure, but
Right.
adrenaline's a hell of a drug, and
Oh,
like when
I agree that you're making a split second decision, this, that, and the other, but at that point he had not assaulted anybody, and we don't punish people for what they're about to do. We punish them for what they do.
I would disagree on the about to do like conspiracy is definitely a crime. Like conspiracy to commit murder,
Mhm.
like you definitely can get in trouble for doing.
But you have to catch them in the act of murder. Like you have to step in and successfully prevent the murder, and then the people that conspired to do it will be charged there. But that's the thing is the
Mm,
action has to happen or be in the process of happening.
the Gretchen Whitmer kidnapping, where it was like half the people that were planning the kidnapping were feds,
Hmm.
and then all these other guys that are on trial saying like, hey, like we just basically went along with the plan that the feds were proposing. They're sitting in prison right now,
Right.
and there was never an attempt to kidnap Gretchen Whitmer.
And the thing is the feds didn't come up with the idea; they did, and that's been proven out in court. They came up with the idea, and the feds were able to infiltrate and encourage, which I also think is entrapment. And I'm not gonna get into that, but at the same time, there's a lot of terrorists that we've entrapped that way too. So,
Yeah, but they aren't Americans, so
well, some of them were, unfortunately, and that's the
yeah.
problem. Is like they, if it's okay for them, it's okay for them. You know what I
Are,
mean? Like, yeah.
are you talking about terrorists like the January 6th terrorists? Is that where you're going with that?
No, but if you want to go into that, we can. Because I think it's very telling that we have the leader of the Oath Keepers serving an 18-year sentence for January 6th.
I think it's also very telling of where the priorities of our justice system lie.
I mean, you have the guy that pretty much orchestrated an attack on the U.S. Capitol.
I think we had what equated to a riot. I
I
think what
think
happened to January 6th was far less significant, far less impactful than the riots that were going on during the Summer of Love.
I think you had a coup attempt. I the thing is, you'll never convince me otherwise. That was a coup attempt in the United States.
I,
The people that go around shouting that the United States is a banana republic turned it into a banana republic by a coup
so
attempt.
I would agree that certain individuals definitely had coup in their minds, and we wanted to overthrow and kidnap people that were in Congress. But to say that that represents the majority or even a plurality of
And what I love
that
is,
riot,
I mean, you had people erect a scaffold
okay,
and
but
start
that's
shouting,
more
"Hang
about
Mike Pence."
I, at a certain point, like you have to accept that there's rhetoric. Like there, look at what's the I always forget her name, Kathy Griffin, I think,
Hmm.
where she was posting on Twitter a picture of Donald Trump's severed head.
Right, I saw that.
Like
And
at
even
what
I was
point?
like, even, and I never thought Kathy Griffin was funny for the record, but even I was like, that's a bit far, even for like a
It,
comedian.
but that's all it is to me is it's bad
Right.
taste. It's freedom of speech. I think erecting gallows is more about sending a message than actually like unless there was an actual razor blade attached to that. Like, I don't know. It's more about just for optics.
I mean, the police officers that were definitely assaulted by people, I would say would argue with you that it was not about optics. These people were here for a very specific reason, and that was to overthrow the government to
Again,
institute Donald
some
Trump
of
as
them,
president of the United States.
some of them. So some of them definitely were like the people that were bringing in the zip ties
Yeah.
and like handcuffs.
And
Absolutely.
we have a wonderful French word for that. It's called a coup.
Okay, but again, you're saying this whole mob of people were
Oh,
all acting in a
I'm not
coordinated
saying the
effort.
whole mob because we're not sentencing the whole mob.
Okay, so the
We're
people that were
sentencing the people that got the mob riled up. We're sentencing the people that were there for nefarious reasons.
not all of them. So that's what that whole Ray Epps video where you or multiple videos where you see him yelling, "We need to go into the Capitol," and a bunch of people around him are like, "What? No, what are you talking about?" And they start chanting "Fed."
Hmm.
But Ray Epps, nobody wants to question him in front of Congress.
I argue we should because I would really like to get to the bottom of what happened here. And if the feds were involved, I want to know that too.
That and the people that were opening the doors. There was that video that even AOC, like I think she was told to shut up about it because
Right.
like she was on video, like some candid like they opened the doors for them, and we haven't heard a peep out of her on that since.
Right.
But that's what I want to know is who's opening the doors, who or you see the guy like point up like, hey, I need these doors, and then all of a sudden
We're both
magnetic
on the
locks
same
released.
page here. Is like I want anybody who assisted, anybody that opened doors, anybody like I want all of them pulled in front of Congress, and I want them asked why.
I would say we're reading the same book, but not on the same page because
Well,
I think you think the feds were helping the the riot, trying to bring it into the Capitol, and I more think they were trying to make this look worse. Like I think again, it's all about optics.
well, I also think that part of Capitol procedure during that time, especially when you have an angry mob outside, is to more or less control the mob by letting them into certain parts of the building because they had already breached the building, and to keep them away from senators and congressmen. And the thing is I don't know that policy, but I would imagine that it probably is to lead parts of the mob on wild goose chases to be like, hey, and here to the left when they're actually to the right, kind of thing.
Okay, so there was one side of the building that people broke into, and
Correct.
then there was on the other side of the building they were letting people in.
Hmm.
So I feel like wouldn't you want to concentrate like focus people into one area, and then that shaman guy, once he actually got the Tucker Carlson video where he's walking around like
Well, that's the
leading
thing is
prayers, and
the
he
thing
seemed
is
like a pretty
when you're doing
peaceful.
mob dispersal, right? When you are doing like mass protest dispersal, the idea is to split them up. And that's why I'm like, well, this could be procedure, but I want someone to come out and tell me that's what it was. And that's the thing that none of them are doing. And which is what makes it sketchy, is because it's like, hey, If you come out and say, hey, I was told to open this door and I was told to direct people to the left because we're trying to disperse a crowd, I can understand that. But what I don't understand is I'm holding a door and I'm saying, oh, right this way. Like, you want to go to the Senate chamber? It's right over there. That's the thing that, no. Like, I want answers to that question.
That's what the shaman had that guy escorting him around basically the building.
Right.
And the police officer or whatever, I don't know if he's actually a police officer, but whatever the security person was saying, like, hey, you know, I agree with you guys, like, you know, I don't really agree with the way you're doing it, but I agree with your right to protest and all this. And I don't know, the left set the tone for what is a peaceful protest. And I don't think that what happened on January 6th was worse than anything that was happening during the peaceful protests of 2020.
The difference is one was a coup and the other one wasn't.
Oh, you mean the difference is how many lives were lost?
No, I'm saying one was a coup and the other one wasn't.
No, the difference was that it happened.
One has the intent of overthrowing the sitting government and instituting Donald Trump. The other one is lashing out against cops for killing black people in your community.
But at what point do you say that the intentions of certain individuals would arise to the intention of the whole group?
I mean, I think BLM should be held accountable for trashing their cities. Like, honestly, I've been calling for that for a long time because, like, I understand the anger and the outrage? I do. Do I think that gives you the right to go burn down businesses and trash the city that you live in? No, I don't. So once a mob gets out of hand, if you were the organizer of that protest, which we've already proven in like the 60s and 70s when people were sitting on the White House lawn and things like that, the moment those things get out of hand, the people that organized the protest or organized the sit-in were charged. And I think that should stand for everything. I also think that what's her name, the head of BLM, should be charged. If you're organizing a protest and it turns violent, you should have to answer for that. Like, you didn't do the things that were necessary to keep it nonviolent.
So we've come full circle to that two-tier justice system.
Right. It is two-tiered.
And it's not the elite. It's not necessarily that she had enough money. And she did have enough money because
she had enough money. That's the thing. If once you hit a certain level in this country, it appears that you can get away with pretty much anything. When Donald Trump says that he could shoot a person in the street and get away with it, I think he's telling the truth.
You mean like Alec Baldwin?
Yeah, I think he's telling the truth. And I think Alec Baldwin, that whole thing is hilarious to me, but at the same time, I can also see why they dropped the charges against him because it's really on the armor at that point.
Yeah, one of the most
Alec Baldwin pulled the trigger.
Yeah, one of the most tone-deaf tweets was when Alec Baldwin he posted something about like, oh, we're done with shoot like the Rust filming. Maybe he said the word shooting, but
right.
We're done with Rust. Like, oh man, it was so good to get this beard off. I'm so glad to be done with this so I could shave this beard off. No mention of Haleen Hutchinson. Nothing about the shooting. And like, what? It's not like I killed somebody. Why is everybody so mad?
Well, I mean, the thing is again, once you reach a certain income tier in this country, you seem to be removed from the rest of reality.